Hi, everyone. Welcome to our, I'm going to get so distracted by all the messages. um, welcome to our January chat. I'm Judy, and we have Elizabeth. You want to raise your hand, Elizabeth? There's Elizabeth, our all around wonderful, keeping us together editor. I consider you my boss. I don't know if we think about that, but I do whatever you tell me.
Uh-huh.
On my screen, so next to Elizabeth, I see Robin Koehler. Robin, yeah. Robin's going to talk about her antique quilts and antique quilts in general. And then the next one I have in my lower left is Deanna Hodson, our wonderful tech editor. Also my boss. I do everything Deanna tells me to.
I don't know about that.
And then next we have Patricia Sanabria Friedrich.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, hey
Yeah.
Patricia. And she's going to talk a few minutes about her Out on a Limb wool applique piece. And then last we have Julie Porter. Oh, I know what that other JW is. That was for someone else who I don't think can make it. Okay, so we have Julie Porter, whose project in our January issue is called No Joy, which is a beautiful quilt. And she's going to demonstrate her unique applique method. So I see polls. Let's do a quick poll. I'm going to type it in right now. Have you looked at our January mini magazine? And it's a single choice of either yes or no. And start. Okay, so go ahead and let us know if you've looked at the magazine yet.
Oh, yes, it's not letting me put my name on there. Click.
Organizers, I don't think you get to vote, so just
Oh, okay.
That's why.
No wonder I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
All right, so 82% of our attendees have looked at it, so that's good. Published result. Yeah. Okay, so let's just get this session going, and this is being recorded. Let me double check that. I think it's recording. So our agenda today is Patricia's going to take about 5 minutes to tell us about her Out on a Limb applique, and then I thought we'd give what is it? It's just now 4 o'clock. Julie, what would you say, about 20 minutes to demonstrate your applique?
I've just got a small flower, so maybe 15.
Okay. And then last but certainly not least is Robin Koehler, who is an antique quilt everythinger, appraiser, and collector and finisher with fascinating stories. So she'll tell us all about that. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. And, during the presentations, if you have a question, just type it in the chat. And if Elizabeth sees that we need to interrupt to answer your question in process, we'll do that. So take it away, Patricia. Show us your beautiful applique and tell us about it.
I'm just going to show you. This is my piece in the magazine this month. And I just love it. It's not only because I made it, but I love nature and I love birds. My favorite animal. And then, so I create this just because I see a picture. I took a picture of a bird in the backyard of my house. So I come up with this design. And the stitches, I don't know if you can see it here, but if you already have the magazine, can see the stitches are very simple, very, very simple. And I just like to do simple stitches in that way people doesn't get intimidated with fancy stitches or anything. I like to use like just more common stitches. And in my project here, I just use blanket stitch, and I use feather stitch and a stray stitch. And for the star, I use like a very long lazy daisy. I don't know if you can appreciate that, but
Yes.
lazy daisy stitch, and it just give a little bit of texture to the, to the start. And I use some French knot in the center.
Nice.
And I did with a darker thread. I did a straight line, a straight stitch, I'm sorry, and inside the lacy daisy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I am moving too much my project, or if you can really see it or not, but that's what I like to do. Just combine simple stitches to create something a little bit different. And I just use a little bit of mini buttons too,
Mhm.
and French knots, and blanket stitch. And in the edge here, in this one I use like a long one and a short one, long one and short one, to give a little bit of, a little bit of dimension or design different than just all the same size. So that's how I have the stitches done in my project this month. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
You have questions, Elizabeth?
I don't see any questions yet. We've got some nice comments. Just Susan I says it's gorgeous. Cindy T says that is one of the projects I want to do. Ellen M says beautiful. She lives in New Mexico and has never seen a cardinal there. I would say that's one of the things that's beautiful here. I'm in Iowa and it's winter and it's ugly, but man, we have cardinals. So,
Yes.
and then Lynn R says, looks so much better live. Beautiful. Cindy E says that is lovely. And I'll say, I love the stitching on this one. I mean, you're like you said, you're using easy stitches, but with all of those straight stitched pine needles, it is so gorgeous. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love those pine needles. And when we did the video on this project, I was just amazed at how you can just start from just a little piece of fabric, and then the lines that you draw on it and then stitch on it make it come to life. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I like to do everything by hand. So all my drawings are by hand, and that's how I start. And choosing colors and threads, and then I start the design that way. So
It's beautiful.
We have
Beautiful.
a few more
And-
comments. I think it's Mario. I think, is it your brother, who's
yes,
from Costa Rica?
yes, that's my brother.
Okay. So just for all your readers and viewers, we will be seeing a design from Patricia's brother Mario next issue. And he says, in Costa Rica, we do not have cardinals, only the ones from Patricia's projects. And then Debbie Wick says, love all your beautiful handwork. So I don't think we have any questions, but people are loving it. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Julie, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your quilt, and then show us how you do the applique?
Yes. So No Joy, the quilt that I just came up, it was actually supposed to be a fall quilt. We talked about that in the other video, so I don't want to bore you a little bit with that, but it didn't get finished, so it turned into a Christmas holiday winter quilt. And most of you know how that goes, we just, anyways. And I did it because I was telling Judy before, there was a video or an Instagram post with a mom who had all of her kids and her dogs, and she was just kind of jokingly complaining about having to get all the things done around the holidays. And it just got me to thinking, I hope that we can take the time, even with the busyness of the holidays and the busyness of winter vacation and breaks and all the things, and the kids are home. For those of us who live where there's snow, it can be a lot. And there's a lot of mess and there's a lot going on. And I just hope that you take the time to enjoy it and see the joy that it brings, and just enjoy the joy, if you will, of your surroundings and what's going on inside your home, and not get caught up in all of the, all of the things that come with raising kids and having vacations and holidays and people over. So that was how I came about that. So we live in Oklahoma, so we have snow and we have mud, and I'm on a dirt road, so I can appreciate all the things. And sometimes it gets overwhelming, but we just have to take a minute and enjoy around us. So because it's fleeting, it goes by so quickly, and before those young moms know it, those kids are going to be grown and out the door. So just enjoy that time.
Do you have your quilt there?
I do not have my quilt here. So that quilt was made by a very dear friend of mine, Patty Richey. And I wasn't even thinking, I brought it back to her when I went out to California last weekend to teach. So she's got that back with her.
Well, lucky her.
Lucky her. I was lucky that she let me use that because again, I'll tell you a funny story. I was making it and I had a little candle, and my original has a little burn mark in it. It got a little piece caught on fire. So I was lucky that she got hers and had hers finished so that I was able to use it. Yeah. That's just that's life, right?
And then you get to appreciate the joy of having a really unique feature in that quilt.
No, you know what I did? I took a little cat appliqué and I appliqued right over that burn mark. And that's where that cat came from. So there you go. But I did come up with a method of applique. If you want me to go ahead and demonstrate that, I will. Let me get that for you here. Hold on a second. I'm going to turn this around.
Elizabeth, are you getting any questions or anything in the meantime?
No, but I was thinking maybe I would just quick share a screen of I'm sure most people have seen it, but let me just quick show the quilt.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I think I can do it.
Thank you.
We'll see if I know what I'm doing here. What? Okay. That's not what I'm trying to do. Sorry. Just
You know what? Hold on one second. I have hold on.
That looks like a ruler box. Oh no, that's a ruler in a box. Okay.
Oh, my ruler box. Yes.
That
So
from
here
Real
it
Nice
is.
Stitches.
Here's part of it. There's that cat that's covering up the burn mark. Well, there you go. But I did, anyways, I did applique before. And during COVID, when I first learned how to do applique, we had the freezer paper and the starch and the iron and the whole thing. And then I learned how to use applique. And during COVID, I ran out of the applique paper. So on a whim, I just came up with this method, and this is what I've been using ever since. So
I want to jump in. Elizabeth, should I make her a presenter? Would that make her have the whole screen? I forget how we do this.
In the gallery.
Let's see, there's Julie Porter, not me. I'm just gonna. Doesn't look like I could. No.
So Judy, sorry,
Yeah.
I think people can change their own screen, and the way that they do it is with, there's a circle at the bottom of your screen that has a dot, 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 and it says more if you click on it. There's a change layout. And if they change it from tiled to either sidebar or top bar, that should make the person who's speaking big. So sorry, people. This provider, it's not like Zoom, but it keeps changing, and so every month it's new. Woo, it's exciting. But so if you can try to do that and see if it makes sense.
Thanks.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. So the method that I use is unique in that we've got the freezer paper. So I have already traced a flower template onto freezer paper. And if you're not familiar with freezer paper has a dull side and a shiny side. The shiny side is what adheres to your wool or your fabric, and the dull side is what I trace onto. And I always use a pencil to trace. I've traced the template and I've cut the template out already with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can see that I've got my purple fabric here. And I've actually ironed this. What is unique about this method is I've ironed it to the right side of my fabric, not the wrong side. It's on the right side. Okay. And I've clipped my fabric because this is very curvy. I've clipped it all the way around. You can see all the clips. I've clipped about every 1/4 inch all the way around. And when I clip, I don't want to clip all the way to the paper. I want to leave about a pin width away so those fibers don't come out. If you do that and you get fibers poking out, you'll know what I'm talking about. But when you clip, you want to leave about a pin width away from the edge of that paper. And I've already gone ahead and I've clipped all the way around. And I'm going to use what I love to use is the Soline glue pen. You can use a regular glue stick if you don't have the glue pen. These are refillable. They're really nice. And I use my awl, just a awl from Clover. Any awl will do. You just really need a sharp point. And I'm going to turn this over. And I am going to just mark with my glue pen along the edge. So you can see that it's right here along the edge, just below the clipped mark. It would be where the paper is. And I'm going to take my awl, I'm going to just pull this back until I can see the paper. I'm just going to pull that back. And because I've clipped so much, I can just take each little piece that I've clipped and pull it back. Now, when you're using this pen, you only want to do about 1 or 2 inches at a time. It does dry pretty quickly. It's very easy to sew through. I don't have any problem with it at all. And it does wash nicely. So you can see that I'm just pulling this back, one little clipped piece at a time. If I'm not working with a curved edge, there's no need to clip so much. Only clip where it's curved. A nice thing too about this is I can take this pretty much anywhere because I've got just 2 items that I'm using. And I had to do, when I was doing the freezer paper method with the starch, you know, you kind of are limited to where you're at because you need electricity and all the things. So this is really handy. Going around the bend here. If you haven't worked with an awl before, it does take a little bit of time yourself a little grace. It takes a little bit of time getting used to. But once you get it, you can see that it does go fairly quickly. And there we go. So there's the back. I'm going to peel my template off, and I can reuse this template over and over. And I have my flower. Pretty easy to do. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Not seeing any questions, but I was so surprised when I watched your video about this. This was like, I mean, yes, I've done needle turn applique and starch turned under edge applique, but this was a new to me technique, and that was sure fun to look at.
Well, good.
The rest of the presenters, I think I muted you, just so you know, so don't just start talking. You can unmute yourselves, but I was trying to get it so people wouldn't jump around to whoever was making a noise.
You. Now I'm jumping around.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you hand appliquing now, or will you take it to the machine, or how are you putting it on the background?
So now you can do it however you'd like. I always hand applique. So I like to use either the Wildlife thread, or if I want to match it, if I don't want it to look so primitive, I'll match the thread maybe with a single strand of DMC floss. I like to use the chenille 24 needles because they have a nice large eye. With this method, if you want to sew it down with the machine and applique it with the machine, that works. Like I said, the glue doesn't gum up the needle, so that's what's really nice about this particular glue. I am not good at machine applique, so everything I do is hand done.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'm not seeing any other questions. We've just got people saying fantastic technique. Thank you for the tips. What a great technique. Anne says, I can do this. Thank you.
Yeah.
You can, Anne. I wanted to show you. So this is done with, this is sewn down just by hand, and it's done with the single strand of floss that you can't see. So, and then if you want it to look more primitive, I will use, like I said, the Wild Eye. Sherry Payne was my mentor and teacher when I was learning how to applique, and she always used the Wild Eye thread to stitch down
Hey,
everything. So
Will you scooch that back a little further from you? We can't really see it. Right there is perfect.
see the Wild
YLI. Is that what? Is it 3 letters?
YLI.
It's
And
hand quilting thread, so it's a little thicker. Is that correct?
It is thicker. It does give you a much different look when you're appliquing on, versus when you're trying to match it with your thread. So it will give you a more primitive look. It just depends on the look that you're going for. Yeah. If you like the primitive, I would suggest trying the YLI. It comes in the black and tan are my favorite. But other than that, if I'm trying to stick with a more traditional look, I will just use matching thread and just try to bury that thread in the seam, in the fold here. Not give it such a primitive look.
We've got a couple more comments and then a question. Doris T says, I'm working on P3's Halloween Baltimore album. I have 1 square done and right now sewing on a piece. I have most of the pieces with the freezer paper on. This will make it go much faster. So
Good.
Great. Cindy E says, thank you for sharing. Marcia B says, what weight is the YLI thread?
Let's see if it says. It does not say. It just says 500 yards. I don't see a weight on it.
But it's hand quilting thread, so it's
Yeah,
like,
it is. It's heavy. It's a heavy weight.
yep.
Definitely thicker than anything I've used before. And it has kind of a it's heavier. If you've gotten a quilting thread before, it's definitely thicker than most. As you can see how it's standing out. Can you see that? How it stands?
Kind of stiff.
Yeah, it is a stiffer.
Yeah.
Definitely different if you haven't tried it before.
That's why you need the bigger needle with the bigger eye.
Yes. I was going to show you. So if I have this fabric, I'm going to give you a little demonstration on what it looks like if you guys want me to do that.
Yeah, please.
That'd be great. Can I have some comments while you're stitching, or?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to mention too, just as a little tip, if you guys haven't tried, see if you can see that I'm pulling this out and my thread is staying raveled. It's because I'm using that Hugo's Amazing Tape. So I use this Hugo's Amazing Tape to wrap my spools, and I'm able to take the thread out without removing the tape. And
Oh.
it's fantastic. It is absolutely wonderful.
What's the name of it?
It's called Hugo's Amazing Tape. It is, you can get it at Walmart, Home Depot, and it's kind of like a vinyl. It sticks to itself. So I'm going to show you, I'm doing this in black. I'm going to thread this here. And I will show you what the more primitive look looks like versus if I do a single strand of floss. All right. So I don't do a buttonhole. I'm not good at the buttonhole stitch, so I don't do it. But I do a small primitive whip stitch. And if you want to take questions or answers or whatever, that's fine. You guys can talk while I'm stitching.
So it's kind of hard to see. I mean, it's good to see that you're doing it, but really you're just going into the background and coming up, taking a little bite of the fabric, and you will be able to see just a little bit of that black thread on the end, right?
You're just going to see a little bit. I don't know if you can tell, if you can see that. See it? It's just a simple little tiny whip stitch. You can kind of see that. And the same would be with the black thread.
Cindy E is asking, would you send us an email listing the products you all are sharing with us? I think we can do that at the end. Might take a day, but I think we can write that down and send that out. Judy, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And then Connie D says, Google says that thread is 40 weight, that YLI hand quilting thread, but even if it's a 40 weight thread, definitely it's got that. It's not really waxed, but it's like a coating that it's kind of like a waxed, thread. So know that it's going to be thicker and more, well, whatever, stiffer than just a regular 40 weight thread. Lynn R says, I follow Julia on other Facebook groups and I've learned a lot from her. That's cool.
Thank you.
And then we had one question. Let's see, Karen B was asking, this will work with wool and cotton fabric, correct? And I think, do you just do it for cotton, Julie?
The thread?
Well, I'm not sure.
Technique. So the technique you only need for cotton, because wool, you cut it out exactly on the line. You don't have to turn it under. The thread, if you're asking about the thread, I use both YLI or the floss on wool and cotton. So it's good for anything.
And then Kathy K was asking, where can you purchase the applique thread? And I would say YLI thread isn't as widely available, but it is at quilt shops and sometimes Joann's.
I know that, yeah, I've never seen it at Joann's. I would just Google YLI hand quilting thread and the shops that do carry it will pop up. I know of several, but I don't know if, all right, I don't know if you can see any of my stitches, but there it is. So I've done the thread without, I don't know if you can even see that, but that stitch is coming right through the seam or the fold. So you can't even see these 3 stitches. And then these here are done with the primitive whip stitch, but you can't really. There you go, kind of can see it. Hand quilting, hand applique.
I don't see any more questions, so I don't know if you want to move on to Robin.
Yeah. And Julie, you want to spin your camera around so we can see your smiling face again?
Yes, absolutely. 1 second.
Okay, so Robin Koehler, Nestlings by Robin. You want to tell us about antique quilts?
Okay. Well, I don't know what everybody wants to know, so I'm just going to start talking. I have been designing for over 20 years, and probably, let's see here, late 2016 or so, I had joined a guild where there was a certified quilt appraiser, and she kept saying, you should be a quilt appraiser. And I said, no, I shouldn't. It's a lot of work. And so then she invited me to come along to a show that she was at, and I sat there the whole show. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go look at the quilt show. I'm going to go look at the quilts. And instead I sat there for 3 days like this going, but how do you know that? And she kept saying, because you want to be a quilt appraiser. So I started following her to shows. I found that because my family were not quilters, so I came into the industry as a designer.
Oh, and
Okay, I'm back.
sorry,
I
I thought I was muted myself.
So I didn't know about the rich history of our industry as a whole, and studying to become an appraiser gives you such rich information about where we came as quilters, how the designs came about, you know, that kind of stuff, how the textiles were created. It's amazing what's out there. I would say if anybody were interested in learning how to appraise a quilt, there are classes at AQS Paducah every April. There's a 3-day appraising class you can take, and to become a certified appraiser, I have to take that class as a beginning. But then they also have other classes that are, I don't know, kind of gateway drugs. You go in, there's a class for just quilt dating workshop. You just go and you hear how they date quilts, which is important. It's an important process. And then there's also an evening class that anybody can sign up for, and it's a hand-on appraising where 2 of our instructors from those appraising classes come in and help appraise, like general people can bring quilts in and have them appraised, and you learn a lot during those classes. So after 2.5 years of following my mentor around and taking all the classes I could take, I became certified in 2019. And we're going to talk a little bit about antique quilts. So the one behind me, I got for a steal at a silent auction. It is circa 1840. The fabrics are in amazing condition, except there are some little tears in some of them because over time, just like people, fabrics get dry and brittle. And the more brittle those fabrics become, they can get little tears in them. So these particular reds are called turkey reds, which are phenomenal. There's so many cool prints in there that I just love them. And when Judy asked me to do this, she kind of asked me to talk a little bit about what we look for. And so I'm going to show a couple of books on here that were the starting process of things to start studying. If you're interested in old quilts, even new quilts. There are 2 books by Eileen Tristane. And this is the first one here, Dating Fabrics. And this was the color guide from 1800 to 1960. And in this book, you just have swatches and swatches of fabric by decade that you can go in and start looking at what those fabrics looked like, the colors that they used in certain decades, the way the prints were done. We find that prints from long ago were smaller than when they remade them later on. The prints tended to be larger. So for appraisers, those are always good clues. The other book that Eileen did was this color guide, so 2, and it was 1950 to 2000. And these are excellent books just to have if you're curious at all. I would also say anything by Barbara Brackman, anything you can read by Barbara Brackman, her blogs, her books, everything. She is a walking encyclopedia of the history of quilting. And this particular book is her Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Patterns. If you've never seen it, if you have EQ, you might have it. There's a block base that goes with it. And then she also wrote an Encyclopedia of Appliqué. And in here, these are all her hand sketches of designs that she found on antique quilts and then sketched them out for us. Amazing, right? And this one behind me is really cool because I've looked in the applique book. I can't find it in there. So I went to the piece design book, and it's very similar to 2 pieced stars in there, but the quilt behind me is all applique. It's all hand applique. And I am completely in love with that because I'm an applique designer. So woo, even better. So the first thing we do when we're looking at quilts when they come to us is we're looking to date them. We want to find out what era are they from. Are they from the 19th century? Are they from the 20th century? Big hints are fabric colors. Here's a block from, this is going to be from probably 1870, 1860, somewhere in there. We know by the browns and the pinks and the greens. Versus if you have seen these quilts, you know that this is a wedge from a double wedding ring. And we know that these colors are very much 1920s, 30s, 40s. So immediately right there, those colors tell us where to put a quilt. Also, designs tell us where to put a quilt. Grandmother's Flower Garden, for example. It's hexagons. Anybody who's seen Grandmother's Flower Garden knows it's just lots of little hexagons. The hexagon shape has been around for centuries. There were mosaic quilts made in the 1700s and the 1800s, but the specific design of the Grandmother's Flower Garden in those colors, those pastels, tells us 1930s. So there are some quilts we can look at and identify right away. The next thing we look at is condition. Just like real estate, you've got location, location, location. With quilts, we have condition, condition, condition. So we're looking at them, and you could have a beautiful quilt come across the table, but if it's ripped and stained and losing its parts, value goes way down. If it comes across the table and there were lots of them made, and I'll go again back to the 1930s. The top 3 designs in the 1930s were the Grandmother's Flower Garden, the double wedding ring, and the Dresden plate. So if you have some of those in your family, more than likely your value is going to be sentimental because there were so many of them made. It's like if you have an autograph from a very famous person, the more times that person autographed things, the less value that autograph has. If you have a baseball signed by somebody who was known to never sign baseballs and you've got one, the value on that went higher because it's more rare. So those are the things that we look at when we're appraising. We're looking at designs and colors and the condition of it and the popularity of that design and the uniqueness of that design. I know that a lot of people are interested in older quilts, but they don't necessarily want to be an appraiser. And so I would say if you are interested, there's a fabulous organization called the American Quilt Study Group. Anybody can join. When you join, they do a seminar every year. It's at a location, but they've also started adding virtual seminars. So if you can't travel, you can do them online, and they will just show you the most amazing things you didn't know you needed to see. That's what I love about them. I didn't know I needed to see that quilt from 1750, but I'm so glad I did. So that's my short bit on appraising and what it looks like and what you can learn and where to learn it. Questions?
That
Where are
was
you
real.
located, Robin?
Huh?
Where are you located?
I am in Northern Illinois. I'm like
Okay.
an hour and a half north of Chicago. And I do quilt appraisals for individuals if we make appointments. I do appraisals at guilds. I have done appraisals at the Daytona AQS show. So yeah, I get to see some really, really beautiful stuff and hear fabulous stories. I get to hear really cool stories too.
How much time do you spend with each quilt or with, a person who brings in a quilt? Is it, I'm assuming it might be different if it's at a show or a guild and they like only have a certain amount of time, but is it, I mean, could you just talk forever about a quilt if you had that much time? Or, I mean,
Well, as in anything, it just depends on how chatty the owner and I get. We really try to keep it to 20 minutes, especially if I've got people lining up. I do try to keep it short, but sometimes, we're in the middle of a really good story. There are some quilt appraisers who can look at your quilt and give you your value on the spot. I don't personally do that. I assess the quilt, I take my notes, I measure it, I take all my photographs, and I do all of my write-up. And then I go home because I am required to evaluate those quilts based on the market. And right now the quilt market is not good. So I have to go and do my research on what comps are out there and where that quilt falls in with other evaluations. So yeah, I can take 20 to 30 minutes easy with the person. And then I can easily, depending on the quilt, if it's an easy one, like I've seen them a lot and I kind of already know what the values are. But when I get home, there are times that I have to do enough research. It can take me another 30 to 40 minutes to do the research on a quilt.
we don't really have any questions, but we've got, I think it's Mario says I feel I need to get those books. Barbara M says, interesting information on quilts. I don't make them, but I love them. So that's awesome that you're here watching this, Barbara. And then Lynn R says, thanks. I live in Northern Illinois as well, but sitting in freezing Florida right now.
I moved
Everywhere
from
is freezing.
Florida last year.
We do have one question. Deet C says, this may not be an appropriate question, but do you have any advice on refurbishing, reconstructing family quilts that need to be cut up and pieced again into a smaller item?
Cutting into a smaller item. I know that there was a really big controversy the last year or two about taking quilts and repurposing them into clothing and blah, blah, blah. I fall into the category of doing what's best for the quilt and sometimes for the family. I have had quilts come across my table that were in very poor condition, but there were spots that were still salvageable. And I have told people, sometimes it's just a matter of giving somebody permission. It's their quilt. They can do whatever they want with it. They don't need me to tell them what to do. But sometimes if you give them permission, they feel that it's okay to take a quilt and cut into it. Shadow boxes. I love shadow boxes. I think that if you have a family quilt and maybe there are 3 granddaughters in the family, and they might be interested taking that and making smaller pieces and putting them in a shadow box with information about that person and possibly tools, that sewing notions that that person used, and making a story, a picture. I think that's a great way to do it. Obviously, if you take a quilt and have to cut it down because the edges are bad and then rebind it, try to match the binding as best you can. A good appraiser is going to notice that it had something done to it. If you have to do repairs, you try to pick fabrics that closely match as well as you can. There are plenty of reproduction fabrics on the market where you might be able to match pretty closely. And then that's just a matter of taking and possibly using that wonderful applique technique we saw today and putting that piece over top of the holes, on the front, if you have ripped areas. It's like mending, only, you're matching fabrics and doing it that kind of way. I hope I answered the question right, or I understood it properly.
I think you did. Debbie Wick has a question. She says, I had a few quilts appraised years ago by a certified appraiser. Does the appraisal change over time?
They're good for 3 years because the market changes. And so we're finding quilts that were appraised very highly, like say before 2008, because we had a recession in 2008 and the market never quite came back. And also we are ambassadors for kind of educating the public. So if you think about quilts in the collectible category, which is where they fall, and you think about all the other collectibles on the market, glassware, silver, antique furniture, all of those markets are down. And you have one group of people who are downsizing and the next group of people who don't want that stuff. And so all of it sits there. And as it all sits there, it loses its value. So yes, if you had an appraisal done more than 3 to 5 years ago, then that needs to be reappraised, especially if you're someone who does have valuables and maybe you have a rider on your homeowner's insurance that allows for those extra valuables.
A question. So I have a couple, they're not antique quilts, but my mother-in-law made them probably in the 1980s. And they're showing a little bit of wear, but I just love using them. And on a cold night, she passed away, gosh, 30 or more years ago. And when I, cuddle in those quilts, I think of her. So I'm not really preserving them as a valuable collectible or antique. I'm enjoying them for as long as I can. Is that okay?
It's perfect. So many times I have people bring quilts in and they're just like, well, I don't know what to do with them. And they have some wear issues, but they're really pretty. And I say, the intent of the maker was to use it. If we lock everything in a cabinet thinking we're sitting on gold, we're losing the intent of the maker. And that was the maker's intent. They made something, they gave it to someone to use. So love them, show them, use them.
Thanks.
I think that's great advice. Thank you. And now you're making me, first of all, want to take out any of the few antique quilts I still have left. I think I've sold several because I'm like, oh, I'm done with these. We'll pass them on to the next person. But now I want to get more out. And I want to rejoin the American Quilt Study Group. I haven't been in that for years. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I need to do that again. We don't really have any more questions, but just let's see. Connie D says, excellent presentation. I will use my quilts more. And Cindy E had to sign off, but she hates that she's missing the rest of this. But you know what? She saw the bulk of all of it, I think. So this was a great presentation by all of you. Thank you.
I have a question. Have any of you had a chance to go to the International Quilt Study Museum in Lincoln, Nebraska?
Not yet.
If you get a chance, it's wonderful. And if you get an opportunity to go into their archives, you have to schedule that with like a docent or whatever. But there's some pretty fabulous quilts there. And a lot of what you're talking about, you'll see there. It's wonderful.
Well, AQSG is going to have an upcoming seminar out there. Not this year. I don't know if it's next year or the year after, but yeah, that's one to go to.
Okay, cool.
Deanna, do you know if anyone can sign up with a docent to go behind the scenes? I have luckily gotten to do it before, but that's when I worked at American Patchwork and Quilting. So I didn't know if anyone can do it or.
That I don't know. We had a bus trip from a quilt shop here in town that we went up there, and I contacted them, and they scheduled us. So there were like 40 or 50 of us that were going through, and they were sharing everything with us. So I don't know if it's mainly for that, or if they will let individuals go, or take a small group or something. You just have to call them and ask.
We have one more. Oh, sorry.
Well, we had a deaf gal as part of our group, and they even provided an interpreter for us.
Oh,
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah, I haven't been there in probably 10 years. I need to get back there too. So Lynn R says, do we do this chat every month? And yes, we do. We've got between 2 and 4 designers of our monthly mini. We have 4 designers in our, what we call the monthly mini every month. And we have as many of them that can join us as possible. Judy wrangles them all. So, and I think we've pretty much been doing it kind of in the middle of the month, and we're a little later this month, but I think that's just fine. Any more information, Judy?
I haven't picked the date. You've probably noticed I'm a little bit of a last minute kind of person. So, when early February rolls around, I'll pick a date and get it scheduled. But I strive, we did a survey, and it looks like most people prefer Wednesday afternoons. So I strive to pick a Wednesday when most of the designers and Elizabeth, Deanna, and I can all be involved. And I would also, you guys could email me, Judy at primitivequiltsandprojects.com, if you have topics you would like us to cover. Our very first chat that we had in November, I tried to cram everybody, all 4 designers in to do their demonstrations. And we just talked so fast that, it just wasn't real helpful for the individual designer or the viewers. So, trying to cut it down to not all 4. And then I was just so excited that Robin was willing and able to talk about antiques. So if you have other topics that you'd like us to cover, let me know. And I can make it happen.
We probably consider her our boss. She tells us what to do.
We're a good team, the 3 of us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We're a good team, I think.
Well, thank you. So the February issue, we are wrapping up. Elizabeth, I owe you an editor letter. So probably want that before tomorrow. Maybe by noon tomorrow. Unless you need it before then, just let me know. But
that's fine.
In our February issue, I'm so excited. So we have Patricia Sanabria Friedrich, and then we here in the States, but she's from Costa Rica. And we also have her brother Mario in Costa Rica. This is his debut project in our magazine. So I'm so excited for you all to see Mario's work. These 2 are just amazing artists. Mm-hmm. And then what are our other? We have a big one from Lisa Berman, right?
Yep, I put a list in the chat.
Okay, good. Who's the 4th one?
Ottenson. Sarah Ottenson.
Oh yeah, the farmer's daughter. Yeah, so the February issue is really, really nice, and we'll have the chat and get to talk about it. So that's all I have. Anyone else?
Thank you so much for having me, for letting me show my work and my stitches that I like to use. Anytime that you want me to do a demonstration of how I do it, just let me know. I will be happy to do it.
Thank you. I will take you up on that.
I just want to say one more comment. I think Anne just said a lovely message. She says, I love these mini chats and demonstrations. Feels very comfortable, like we are just sitting in a small room, just chatting and learning. And that's exactly how I feel. And we're very informal. And I know I'm wearing my hoodie today. It's like, okay, because I'm sitting around with friends. So
Yeah.
hope that's what you, I mean, that's kind of our intent here. So, and I also put Judy's email in the chat too. So like you said, if you got any more, ideas for topics, but this is awesome. Thanks everybody.
Thank,
Thank
It's
thank you.
wonderful.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening, everybody.
Keep warm.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
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 Bye.